Hello friends, this is Melanie Stone, the Mistress of the Dorkness. I was asked to do another presentation from the facility owner's perspective, and they didn't record it themselves, so I went ahead and recorded my own presentation. So it looks like I missed a little of the second round of Q&A, but I really think it's an important topic, so I wanted to make sure I captured it to share with people. Because when I'm asked about facilities things, it's always, Kobe or laser scanning or ground penetrating radar or virtual reality, augmented reality or digital twins or like all of this other stuff. And I answer those questions from a technical perspective. I'm like, yes, this is good because of X. No, this wouldn't be ideal because of Y. But it really skims over the major point. So when I was discussing potential topics with the organizer, and she suggested digital twins, and I'm like, no. And not because I don't have respect for the new technology coming along. Like, don't get me wrong, you guys know I'm a tech lover. We can do so much better the better we utilize our technology. And I'm like, I don't have faith that this industry can run until they show me they can walk. And I don't want to rehash my entire presentation, but go into my presentation with the assumption we've made contracts with RFPs and they say we get digital deliverables at the end. This is the assumption. And a lot of times when I talk or discuss these things online, people are just like, oh, the owners don't know this, they don't ask that, they don't. And I'm like, you're not talking to the right person. Not every owner is going to have answers to these questions, but the industry needs to start asking. There were multiple comments in chat when I made the statement that a huge project was being done on my campus and nobody even came to me about the starting point. And yeah, there's so much passion and talent in the industry. But for right now, until I can consistently get good deliverables at my facilities or for my clients' facilities, I can't get super duper excited about these newer things, because I need these other things that people are still falling down on in a lot of companies. Some companies are fantastic. But again, don't want to rehash the entire presentation, but I wanted to share this with you so you can understand what goes on in a facility, what your data is going to be used for day to day for decades, if not over a century. And I hope you enjoy. There's not a whole lot of people talking from the owner's side at BIM conferences. There are a ton of people talking to people who want to sell to owners, and there's a lot of exciting technology out there. People are doing some cool stuff with, as we just saw from Adrian, reality capture with drones is a lot easier than the way I started out, like measuring things with a tape measure and then a disto and drawing them up manually. So yeah, lots of good exciting things. But in response to everybody talking about exciting things at the BIM conference, I just wanted to tell you what it's actually like in a facility. Pull back the curtain, let you have a peek at the way that we do things and interact, and all of the people behind the scenes who are going to use things that originally come out of your model but get put into 50 different programs according to whatever that user needs. So let's start at the beginning of the project. We have a project meeting, right? You have the project manager. In almost every project I've worked on in my 20 years in facilities, it's a renovation. Very seldom are they new buildings compared to the number of times you're renovating existing buildings. And I really wish I could have seen Kate's presentation yesterday on BIM for existing buildings, because that's good stuff. But you're sitting here with the project team. You might have an occupant in there if you're doing something specialized like healthcare design or laboratory or manufacturing, where it's very important how their space works. But let's start out a little further. Like, you've planned the project, you've got the funding, now we're going to move along and actually get started. And the PM's like, hey, facilities, give these guys some data to start with. And yes, we may have in our RFP and our specs that you need to give us a model at the end of the project. And then you're like, oh man, why am I getting AutoCAD and PDFs and blueprints and things like that? Like, hey, we don't have budgets. Renovations have budgets. You build a new wing and you put someone rich's name on it, you get a budget for that. You don't get budget for facilities. We have to duke it out for any funding whatsoever between us and somebody who earns money for our facility. So we pretty much do the best we can. We try to keep good care of our documents and update them, but any major change in technology in a facility, whether it's in facilities or accounting or HR, technology changes happen over roughly a 15-year span. Whether that's, paper to CAD, CAD to BIM, and getting everything up to speed takes literally that entire time until you're ready to upgrade to a newer technology, and it's just putting together a patchwork quilt. So you get your team together, hopefully you have a good relationship with them already. If you don't, start a local user group, and then they'll talk to you if you feed them snacks and give them tips and tricks. So you provide the information to them, they design and build, and then at the end of the project, they give you stuff back. And they don't wish you good luck. I'm just being fanciful there. So good teams that know you, they're going to turn over everything you've put in your RFP and you've billed for and paid for, and bad teams don't. The last company that I was receiving deliverables for was an absolutely massive global company. Everybody wants to work for them, with them, etc. And even they have trouble just getting deliverables that they've already spec'd and paid for. It's a problem endemic in our industry, and that's, no offense to Karen, but when she said something about digital twins, I'm like, good Lord, if these people could actually consistently turn over documentation to every project we work on, then maybe I'll be optimistic for the future. But until then, our industry should be embarrassed by the teams that don't do that and give everybody a bad name, or they turn over something and it's an absolutely appalling state and we have to redo it ourselves or pay somebody else to redo it. And it's a really frustrating position to be in as an owner, because everyone wants to talk about the cool new stuff. And I'm like, I have zero faith because you guys can't even turn over what I already paid for. So I'm sure there are people doing awesome things with digital twin, but consider me a skeptic until I consistently get good documentation, project after project after project. So, first day of business, the number one thing, we've got a lot of end users. So many people are going to touch data that originated in your design. But first day of business, we have to have equipment information in our CMMS, computerized maintenance management system. There's a whole alphabet soup for it. IWMS, CAFM, EAM, IAM, whatever. I wrote a whole blog post because I got so sick and tired of people saying, this would be better described by insert new and totally unnecessary acronym. So I'm going to pretty much try and stick with CMMS and CAFM because those are fine. Computer-aided facility management encompasses it all. First day of business, we need to get that information. Sometimes you could get it if you've got all the equipment information nicely set up in Revit. You can just connect it to something like Archibus and just ingest all that data automatically. But even facilities that are using BIM consistently don't always have the MEP component yet in their models. So they may be having an Excel spreadsheet or an export from DeRofus or something like that. So the CMMS administrator gets all the equipment information in, and the skilled trade supervisors can start hooking it up for work orders and preventative maintenance and getting their equipment scheduled. And that also helps them plan out with staffing. But once your occupants move in, It's like an instant on switch. They're getting work orders, they're getting requests to change things, and they don't know where anything is at yet. So, first day of business, this is our most important thing. But then we move on to the life cycle. And it is a life cycle because nothing in facilities ever ends. It just modifies over the years and it's constantly changing. So ingesting this information in, if you're getting maintenance manuals, operations manuals, we're going to scan those, do some optical character recognition so we can do searches for them. Because they're so big, no one's going to keep them on a shelf somewhere and manually flip through them. And then you call the architect for a PDF of the final set because the Revit model you got has all these design options in there and nothing telling us which one was actually the ones that were built. So while we're waiting for that PDF so we can clean up our model, we start importing into our CAFM system. You know, we get some floor plans in there. If we have some equipment, we'll tie it in there. And we may import the equipment and then later tie it back to the model because we say, okay, yeah, we know this is in here, and we just like throw a generic family in there. We don't need a huge amount of data there because most of it's being managed over in Maximo or Tririga or what do they call that one now? BIM 360 Ops. I haven't used that one yet, but I've been hearing a lot about it, and it seems to have a lower barrier to entry and a lot cheaper than some of the other programs I've used. So you're probably managing the equipment information there, not in the model, but you want a generic physical representation so you can at least locate it. And whenever you're preparing something like this, you always take the project files and archive them. The way that they come in from the design team is going to be held in stasis. And then you're going to take what you need and just put it into your working set, whether it might still be in AutoCAD or it might be in a model. It depends on how far along your journey you are and how many renovations you've had in that particular building. A lot of the CAFM programs will allow you to link in drawings from multiple applications so you can use Revit and AutoCAD, just not on the same floor. So it has to be separate floor records. So you could have like 3 floors that were renovated, they're all in Revit, but the rest of the floors in that building are still in AutoCAD. And we just have to work with the technology we have. And it's a never-ending task, but you always want to keep that original set of just how it came in so you know that you didn't accidentally delete something or some intent was missed. But your working set is what, you know, if you have engineering staff and very skilled maintenance staff, they're going to be going into your patchwork set to see how things are that they need to troubleshoot and maintain. And you're also going to use that patchwork set as the starting point for your next project. And so this is getting to the point. Who are you? The end users. First day of business, your occupants, maybe you've got a set of admins, they're putting in work orders. Something's broken, they need to tell maintenance about it, got to get it fixed. The lease manager, you're using the models to count your usable square footage as well as your rentable square footage, because a lot of leases only include the rentable and you don't know how much space you actually have to work with because you could be paying for some hallway space or some shafts or other things that you can't actually put people in. Maintenance, they're going to manage their work, they're going to schedule out their PMs, they're going to do reports so they can see if they've got problem areas. They're going to use these reports for leadership to try and gain additional funding next year, and of course planning for future work when the end of life is for all of their equipment. But then there are other niche teams like key control, whether that's for like rooms or desks or certain types of equipment that have lockouts. That needs to be managed in a database somewhere, and it might have a floor plan associated with it or just pulled in from the room schedule. And your facilities subject matter expert, they're going to keep this stuff up to date. If they've got some good maintenance folks that are going out there making a napkin sketch when they notice changes or they've made alterations to the system or see something that isn't the way it was on the record drawings, They bring those sketches back to the subject matter expert, who CAD and BIM may be their full-time job, but it may not. They also may be a maintenance manager or project manager or system administrator, but there should be one touch point who is doing the floor plan updates. You don't want to spread that around a bunch of people. And let's see, more users. We've got occupancy planners, space planners. You want to report on what type of space you are. If you're in education, that's going to impact your grants. If you're in healthcare, it's going to impact your Medicaid reimbursements and Medicare reimbursements. Perhaps you've got chargebacks for maybe you're subleasing some spaces, or maybe your different divisions have different budgets and they need to take a portion of utilities or maintenance costs. They can use all the data that's been brought together for that. Reservations, meeting reservations, hoteling, hot desking, charging back for space, charging back for meeting space, and also you would use reservations for scheduling, housekeeping, maintenance setup. So when you schedule your room reservations, you can pick from different furniture arrangements, and maintenance gets a work order when the reservation is made, like, okay, this meeting's starting at 10:30, so at 10 o'clock I need to go in and change the chairs around. Assets are another big thing. Have to, manage them. Sometimes they're tagged, sometimes they're not. Some of our federal clients, you have to have a very firm chain of custody. Like, okay, I press this button and saying that I'm sending this asset to another person. They log in, they press the button saying, yes, I got it, or no, I didn't. So all throughout the life cycle of that asset, when it's time to get rid of it at the end, that federal agency has their whole, birth to death record. And also they like to do annual auditing and reporting so that they know, or they can prove to leadership and taxpayers, I guess, that they're being responsible with their assets. And we talked about maintenance already, but a lot of facilities have their building automation systems, a lot of monitoring points connected into their maintenance management system to send up flags about issues that are occurring, and just like general health checks and reports, so you can tell easier if a building's performing well or if we need to start planning for changes. And also waste. You can schedule and track volumes of waste and recyclables, as well as the path that they take out. And let's see, energy. These systems also monitor energy, and you can certify on, like, hey, this is a LEED certified building, or planning, hey, how can we certify these older buildings? What work do we need to do to bring that up to speed? And there's other niche areas depending on the type of facility you're in. I worked in a hospital for more than half my career, so occupational health and safety, I worked with them a lot because they did reports of where things went wrong, and I would give them floor plans and PowerPoint that they could mark up and they could show to leadership, like, hey, this is how this thing went wrong. Here's our training issue, or here's our physical mitigation issue. We're going to move this wall or move this door. And wayfinding, if you're on a big campus, they're going to start out with these models, and that subject matter expert is going to export out for them IT, clinical engineering, audiovisual. All those guys are probably still using AutoCAD, so that one touch point is going to be exporting from Revit out to AutoCAD, so these guys can do layouts for whatever they need to relay to other people. And I had a fun one time. It was an employee health initiative where I drew maps with little colored legs around the campus to help plan people, like, hey, I want to take a 1 mile walk on my lunch break. Here's an external route and here's an internal route, depending on the weather. And you just never know where your information is going to show up. Like, probably 1 or 2 people max are actually going to touch this Revit model once it gets turned over to facilities. Everybody else is going to have their content curated for them and pulled out to just be what they need, how they need to digest it. Oh, and I didn't put in here, there's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I included that tile to represent all the custom applications. A lot of people, facilities have designed sort of custom wayfinding, you know, maybe to get you to the conference room, and they will pull in information, but it's not directly within Tririga or Archibus or Revit. Like, they're just pulling in the information and overlaying other lighter weight stuff on top of it. And almost every facility that I've worked in has had some sort of website where they're presenting data that originally came from a model or a CAD file, but they're not going to buy Archibus licenses for everyone. They're just going to build a custom application and put it on their intranet, just to give people access to all the vital floor plans and layouts. And before we move on to Q&A, I wanted to do a little plug. The Augie Annual Salary Survey just opened up this week, and I would appreciate it if everybody would take a minute to go to SurveyMonkey/r/2021 Augie Survey and tell us what you're earning. Tell us how your workload is, whether you're thinking about starting a new job. And I'm also resurrecting the job search poll because I heard that 40% of people are looking for new jobs right now, and I want to know if that bears up in our industry. So the salary survey is completely anonymous, and the results will be published in the September issue of Augie World magazine, which anybody can download for free, or if you join for a professional membership right now, your professional membership fees would cover hard copy magazine coming to you. And let's see, there's my contact information in case we don't have time for all of the questions. Oh, Dan asked me to speak about my blog. Okay, thank you, Dan. I've been blogging about mostly facility management issues, but also some more generic design industry issues, just anything that I think is cool. I think I have just had my 16th anniversary, and nobody ever remembers that my name is Melanie, so if you search for Mistress of the Dorkness, nobody forgets that. And I've also had some awesome guest speakers or guest authors on my blog, so sometimes if people want to opine about something and they don't have a platform, or if they're job searching and they want to build up their, you know, online reputation. Is that Twitter handle correct? Yes, Andrew. Because when I had Mistress Dorkness with 2 S's, I got a lot of freaks in my DMs. I'll leave it at that. So yes, that is very intentionally 1 S in Mistress there. Self-preservation.
Melanie, they also asked in the chat if you could post the Augie links in the chat directly, because you're no longer, once again, on the slide, and so that people could go there and fill out those 2 surveys.
Okay, so that's the salary survey, and thank you, Doug. I picked up that nickname at my first job. That when I worked in this facility, the guys noticed some, like the new nameplate on the door, and they walked in and they're like, "Hey, are you the new CAD master?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess it'd be CAD mistress." They're like, "Oh, like Mistress of the Darkness?" And I'm like, "No, man, way more like Mistress of the Dorkness." And it stuck around the office, so I decided to just run with it. And I definitely agree. Sydney says someone should be able on the owner's side to, or whoever receives should be able to ingest this. There's a lot of comments here. Sorry, it's a little hard to follow. But yeah, if anybody else has any questions about FM, please feel free to reach out. Autodesk no longer has a facilities management forum, but they do redirect over to the Augie facility management forum. So it doesn't get a lot of traffic, but there are some really good topics in there, and they don't really age out, because it doesn't matter how much technology progresses, we're still dealing with the same issues. So any FM questions, feel free to reach out to me or the Augie forums.
So one thing I've noticed at USC, which does try to keep up with its facilities things digitally, is we end up actually having to hire a lot of students. Fortunately, students are relatively inexpensive to hire compared to some other people. and trying just to keep the information they have updated to get some of the older buildings in. This seems to be really a never-ending job, I mean, until the lifetime of the building.
That's very true. It never ends. But Doug also made a good point that says that FM subject matter expert should be there at kickoff on day one. I have so many rants. One of my biggest and most obvious ones was right before I left working for that hospital system, they were planning a $1 billion campus upgrade. That's billion. Yeah, it was the largest non-infrastructure construction project in the country at that time, and nobody would talk to me from the project team because like project managers come and go. No offense, but they have really high turnover compared to most of facilities, which most of facilities has like 2% turnover. So $1 billion campus upgrades. So what I did was I invited one of my friends from Autodesk to come to town and asked to be present at this kickoff meeting, and he took me in. And so the team is sitting there debating about origin points and coordinate systems, and I'm like, you aren't setting a coordinate system. We already have one. Like we surveyed, we had everything staked out, everything was accurate and up to date with regard to the boundaries of the campus and the underground utilities. I'm like, keep it there. And they're like, oh, we didn't think you guys would actually have that. I'm like, did you ask? No, you didn't. So yeah, go around the project manager if you can to get a facilities person in there. You're also going to get better documentation and probably on a shorter turnaround, because if I know you're willing to work with me, I'm willing to put aside other stuff and make sure you have what you need to get started.
Mm. So most of it seems to be a lack of communication between what you need and what they want to give you. And so part of it, a lot of it is in the contracts, and they really ought to follow the contracts, so let's set that aside. But who should be giving you what types of information? I mean, is the architect, that's usually the contractor who's doing this? I mean, who's...
Yeah, that was actually...
It's the student intern who is hired for the summer you'll never see again.
No, I never let any of our documents go through any of the interns. Like, they could be around while I was checking things in, but when I saw one guy say, we should probably just ask for less information because we don't need this, I'm like, you're fired. Like, you can't fire me. I'm an intern. I'm like, oh, well. But no, like, we need more information. Like, no offense to the architects, I'm very proud of your work and I like the buildings, but I don't need architectural. I need the MEP, the stuff that's behind the walls, because I can't be taking ceiling tiles down to verify where a shutoff valve is that should have been included on the plans. Like, that's the crux of it. Like, I can go out with my disto and measure where the wall is, and we've got standard materials, so I already know what the ceiling tile and carpet is. It's that other stuff that it's just so vital to have that. And I forgot what my original point was.
But who should be giving you? I mean, from the AEC end, they're going to say, well, you're not asking for the right things, or we've never been contacted to give you those things, but I think what it really is, as someone mentioned, a blended communication for that handover.
So with the team that managed the projects, they insisted that their contracts say that the GC or the architect handles all the information flow. Their contracts did not say that. But to Amelia's question, does the operation and maintenance team have a say to what the contracts are? Yes, the contracts are fine. Everything is in the RFP. It's the specifications, turnover, like the materials you use, the stuff you turn over at the end of the project for commissioning, like all of that is in the RFP. But if you don't have a project manager who's going to enforce it with the contractors, so for me, I just developed a relationship with every contractor involved so that they would send the information directly to me. If it was someone who was new and didn't know me, they might send it to the project manager, in which case it might never be seen again, or they might give it to me a couple months later. So that could be improved if the project management team would be more organized about it. But we're construction, we're maintenance. We figure out how to make things work, and yeah, we're going to share with each other as much as we can. Yes, the turnover should be more formalized, because I don't necessarily need the architect taking receipt of the MEP stuff. The MEP guys can just send that to me directly. It'll be a lot quicker because all the teams finish at different times, right? The architect may have finished his drawings a month before construction ends. MEP guys may be doing updates for a few weeks after. So I think it should just all be sent over whenever it's finished.
But how does the owner know that they need someone like you? I mean, apparently they need someone like you in order to organize this transfer of information, and you should be on the project pretty early on to be able to specify and make sure what your needs are known in the contract, make sure you get what you need. But how do they know they need you?
Well, I think...
Is it better now?
Good. I'm going to keep that opinion to myself. It depends on the facility and the leadership, because most facility leadership has, like I said, it's stiff competition for any financial resources and headcount. So they're going to try and find any way to save money, and if they realize that their projects, they're spending $200,000 a project for site surveys because they're not starting off with good enough documentation for the design team, and the design team has to recreate it from scratch, I think that's normally been the trigger. That they're like, we can't keep paying people to recreate the wheel. We've already got these drawings somewhere. We just don't know where, or... So I think good leadership is where that starts, that they're going to fight for that person who they know can be that single source of truth and manage that and try to keep things up to date.
So thank you very much for your honesty, Melanie. Excellent presentation. We're going to move on now, but thank you again. There'll be time for a few questions at the end of the session as well.